In the heart of West Africa, long before European colonization reshaped the continent, there existed a kingdom so powerful that its very name struck fear into the hearts of neighboring states. This was the Oyo Empire, a civilization that dominated the region for over 4 centuries, commanding vast armies, controlling critical trade routes, and building one of the most sophisticated political systems in African history. Today, we're diving deep into the rise, golden age, and eventual fall of the Oyo Empire. A story of military genius, political intrigue, and economic mastery that deserves to be remembered. The story of Oyo begins in the 14th century in what is now southwestern Nigeria. According to oral tradition, the empire was founded by Oranmiyan, a legendary prince from the sacred city of Ile-Ife, the spiritual homeland of the Yoruba people. But the early years were far from glorious. The young kingdom faced constant threats from more powerful neighbors, particularly the Nupe people to the north and the Bariba kingdoms to the northwest. Around 1535, these pressures became so intense that the Oyo leadership was forced into exile, abandoning their capital. This period of hardship would prove transformative. During their time in exile, the Oyo people observed something that would change their destiny forever: the devastating effectiveness of cavalry warfare. When they finally returned to reclaim their homeland, they brought back not just determination, but a revolutionary military strategy that would make them unstoppable. Under the leadership of Alaafin Orompoto in the late 16th century, Oyo began its meteoric rise. Orompoto, who according to some traditions may have been a woman ruling in male regalia, reorganized the military and established the foundation for what would become West Africa's most formidable cavalry force. What made Oyo different from other West African kingdoms was their mastery of cavalry warfare. While many kingdoms relied on infantry, Oyo invested heavily in horses imported from the northern savanna regions and trained an elite corps of cavalry warriors. Their military machine was built on several key innovations. First, they developed a sophisticated system of military provinces along their borders, each governed by officials who commanded local forces and could rapidly mobilize in case of threats. Second, they created a standing army of professional soldiers, not just temporary levies of farmers. Third, they established a complex hierarchy of military commands that ensured discipline and coordination. The Oyo cavalry could strike with devastating speed across the open savannas of the Yoruba heartland. Their horses, armor, and weapons were symbols of power and prestige. A full cavalry charge by Oyo warriors was said to be like thunder rolling across the earth, breaking enemy formations before the real fighting even began. But Oyo's military strength wasn't just about horses and weapons. They were strategic thinkers who understood warfare as an extension of politics. They knew when to fight, when to negotiate, and when to form alliances. They built a network of vassal states and tributary kingdoms that provided resources, intelligence, and additional troops when needed. By the 17th century, Oyo's military dominance was unquestioned. They had conquered the kingdom of Dahomey to the west, forcing it to pay annual tribute. They controlled territory stretching from the forests in the south to the savanna in the north, creating an empire that rivaled any in Africa. At the heart of the Oyo Empire stood the Alaafin, the divine king whose authority was both absolute and carefully checked. The political system of Oyo was remarkably sophisticated, balancing centralized power with institutional checks that prevented tyranny. The Alaafin was considered the representative of the gods on earth, conducting elaborate rituals that were believed to ensure the prosperity and stability of the empire. His palace in Oyo-Ile was a vast complex housing hundreds of wives, officials, and servants. Everything about the Alaafin spoke of power: his beaded crown, his royal regalia, his ceremonial appearances. But the Alaafin's power was not unlimited. He was balanced by the Oyo Messi, a council of 7 powerful chiefs who represented different lineages and interests within the empire. These chiefs had the extraordinary power to reject the Alafin's decisions and, in extreme cases, could even force him to commit ritual suicide if he ruled tyrannically or brought disaster to the empire. Below the Oyo Messi were other layers of government. Provincial administrators called ajeles were appointed to oversee vassal territories and ensure tribute flowed to the capital. Military commanders held significant influence, and there were specialized officials managing everything from trade to religious ceremonies. This system of checks and balances created stability and allowed Oyo to maintain control over its vast territories for centuries. It was a government built on tradition, but also on practical political wisdom that recognized the dangers of unchecked power. Military might alone doesn't sustain an empire. Oyo's true strength lay in its control of trade routes, crisscrossing West Africa. The empire sat at the intersection of multiple trade networks. From the north came salt, horses, leather goods, and Islamic texts from the trans-Saharan trade. From the south, through the forests, came cola nuts, palm oil, and increasingly, access to European goods arriving at coastal ports. Oyo served as the crucial middleman, taxing goods that passed through its territory and growing wealthy from these exchanges. The empire's markets buzzed with activity. Craftsmen produced magnificent textiles, leather goods, and metalwork. Oyo's textile industry was particularly renowned, with locally woven cloths that were prized throughout the region. Blacksmiths forged agricultural tools and weapons. Artists created brass and terracotta sculptures that today stand as masterpieces in museums worldwide. But the most controversial aspect of Oyo's economy was its involvement in the slave trade. As European demand for enslaved Africans grew in the 17th and 18th centuries, Oyo became a major supplier, capturing people in military campaigns and trading them to coastal kingdoms like Dahomey, who in turn sold them to European merchants. This trade brought enormous wealth to the Oyo elite, but also sowed the seeds of the empire's eventual decline. By the late 18th century, cracks were appearing in Oyo's foundation. The very success that had built the empire began to work against it. The wealth from trade, particularly the slave trade, concentrated power in the hands of provincial governors and military commanders, who became increasingly independent. Internal conflicts erupted over succession, with different factions backing rival candidates for the position of Alafin. The system of checks and balances that had maintained stability began to produce gridlock and civil war. Externally, vassal states saw Oyo's weakness and began to rebel. Dahomey, which had paid tribute for over a century, stopped its payments and even defeated Oyo forces in battle. The Fulani Jihad sweeping across West Africa brought new military pressures from the north. Around 1823, Fulani cavalry sacked Oyo Ile itself, forcing the abandonment of the ancient capital. The empire fragmented into competing Yoruba kingdoms, each claiming legitimacy and fighting for control. The 19th century saw constant warfare among these successor states, a period Yoruba oral history remembers as a time of great suffering. When British colonial forces arrived later in the 19th century, they found not a unified empire but a patchwork of warring kingdoms. By 1888, Oyo had been reduced to a minor kingdom under British protection. Its days of glory seemingly gone forever. Yet the legacy of Oyo endures. The political systems it pioneered influenced Yoruba governance for generations. Its artistic traditions continue in contemporary Yoruba culture. The title of Alafin still exists today, maintained in the modern city of Oyo as a traditional ruler who commands deep respect. The story of the Oyo Empire challenges simplistic narratives about pre-colonial Africa. Here was a civilization that built sophisticated government institutions, commanded powerful armies, controlled vast trade networks, and created lasting cultural achievements. Its rise and fall follows patterns seen in empires throughout human history: military expansion, economic prosperity, internal conflict, and eventual fragmentation. The Oyo Empire reminds us that Africa's history is rich, complex, and worthy of study, not as a footnote to European expansion, but as a story of human achievement and ambition in its own right. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more forgotten chapters of world history. What other African empires should we explore next? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring the past